Hello and welcome to Reader's Labyrinth. I'm Frank, your host. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps. I'd like to introduce a British author, Richard Wall. I ran across Richard on Twitter, where I was quickly intrigued by his novel Near Death. How would I describe Near Death? It's a bit of detective fiction, worked through with spiritual mysteries, human potential, and a ghastly crime perpetrated by an otherworldly antagonist. It held my interest, all 300 pages, and I can tell you, at this point, my lunch breaks are becoming the highlight of my day. Supernatural murder mysteries aren't the only gear in Richard's wheelhouse. He is an avid lover of the American blues musical tradition. In the interview, we talk about his travels, his writings, his passions, and what makes his works tick. When preparing for this interview, I was confronting with my absolute favorite problem an interviewer can face: how to categorize Richard. So instead of trying to put him into a neat box, I'm going to let you watch the interview and decide for yourself. Is it his love of horror writing, music, his travels, or his 22-year service aboard submarines? What exactly makes this guy tick? And if you're like me, you'll probably agree that Near Death is a tremendous read and an awesome experience. You'll find a link in the show notes to Richard's website and an Amazon link where you can purchase Near Death, as well as the other novel, Fat Man Blues, that we spoke about. I invite you to please go by and buy a copy of his book and leave him a review on Amazon. He would really, really appreciate it. And now I would like to introduce Richard Wall. Richard Wall, Rich, my friend, welcome to Reader's Labyrinth. How you doing?
I'm good, Frank. Thank you for having me.
It is currently 1:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What's it like in Great Britain right now?
It's 5:14 in England, and it's dark, and it's been wet and miserable all day. So it's England in November. So what can you do? You know.
Well, it's been kind of wet and dreary in South Carolina for the past 2 weeks here. We have had a couple of sunny spots, though, so we've been thankful for that.
Yeah.
Which one of the positive or negatives about living in South Carolina is we don't really get a winter. We just kind of get some cold days here or there. Rarely snows down here.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's similar in England. We don't get a summer, so.
You don't get a summer. Yeah. That's awesome.
I always say if I'm allowed to see it, then everything else is a bonus. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So have you been to South Carolina? Have you traveled here before?
Shamefully, I haven't. I wrote a novel about it, but I haven't never actually been. It's on my bucket list. I've been to quite a few places in America with the Navy and visiting friends, but never quite made it to South Carolina yet. So,
well, whenever you're ready to visit, you need to stop by the Midlands, which is where I live, and I would love to show you around. There's a couple of really, really cool places that we could visit too. So
you may regret saying that, because
I promise you I will not. Awesome. I am down for it. Well, sir, I am ready to jump right into the questions.
Okay.
I read your novel Near Death. Really loved it. I read it mainly on my lunch break. Mm-hmm. And as I've told my friends, my lunch breaks are getting more and more interesting these days, ever since I started up this little YouTube channel. So I finally have an excuse to read them. So I'll just jump right in. When reading your novel Near Death, I appreciated your description of the antagonist, Joseph Hickey's American Southern accent. And I guess that you can guess why I found that interesting. And to read an excerpt from your novel, his words floating like leaves on the lazy current of his South Carolina accent. That was really cool. I think I'm going to put that up in my desk somewhere. But this was the first clue that the cultural South of the United States holds some special fascination for you as a writer. What is it about the South you find fascinating?
There are a whole list of things. Growing up in England in the sort of 60s and 70s, TV was awash with American cop shows and westerns and stuff like that. So America in general caught my imagination. Just I think as a man of words, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, some of the place names you have are like really, really cool. They have a poetic quality to them, and I think that's even more so in the South, in the sort of Southern accent. I've been to Mississippi and Louisiana and Arkansas, and there's I found a down home humour there, a sort of sideways way of looking at things, which is very similar to where I grew up in rural England. You know, you sort of talk to farmers and country folk, and they'd have a sort of sideways way of describing things, which again, as somebody who enjoys words, that sort of captured my imagination. Going back to the sort of TV and movies, films like Deliverance and Southern Comfort, stuff like that. There are Grapes of Wrath.
Deliverance, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without the cliche, but this is,
yeah, sure.
And I was thinking the other day, and again, probably pretentious again, but it occurred to me that the Southern accent is the vocal equivalent of the sound of a slide guitar. Because I'm a complete blues freak, and that's how it came to me anyway. And I also think that the polite, articulate, and well-mannered delivery in a Southern accent can also mask evil incarnate. I've seen it. There's a few characters in a few movies I've seen, which one was Poltergeist, I think, where there was a preacher went from door to door, and you could see the guy was completely evil, but he had a polite, articulate, genteel Southern accent, and then of course the blues history. As I said, I'm an actual blues freak, and so if I hear something, if something catches my imagination, then I'll research it, I'll read about it, and I'll become the world's biggest bore on it. So that research, the American South is a place I've visited, but I'd love to visit more of it.
Well, I have to say, something that I picked up in your novel is I can tell, I'm like, his interest in the South, it definitely isn't skin deep. I mean, like, the way you describe the atmosphere, the geography, I mean, you really go deep into it. And, as someone from the South, I've lived in the South my whole life. I really, really appreciate that. Because, I guess kind of growing up as a Southerner, and juxtaposed against the rest of the United States, sorry about that. And speaking of the South, we have pollen everywhere, so my allergies are kind of flaring up right now. But you are kind of, we are looked at a little bit different, especially if we go above the Mason-Dixon line. I have some in-laws from Ohio, and as soon as I open up my mouth, everyone is asking where I'm from. So, but it's something that was kind of sticking out a little bit. But there really is a definite quality to the South. And I'm not sure if that's because of the history, the context of the formation of the South, but it seems like a bunch of Southerners just have this no nonsense, this practical approach to life. Yeah,
and that's right. Absolutely.
And in the Southern, and in the Southern Belt, there's the remnants of an honor culture as well. So there was a study that was done a couple years ago, and they had this job applicant. And he was fake, right? I mean, they made up the applicant, and he applied at a bunch of places in the northern part of the United States and the western coast, and a bunch of places in the South, or down south, as we say. And on his application, he had that he had been to prison for 10 years. And, because of the labor laws, a lot of these places were required to call him and kind of do a background check to show that they were considering, fair employment. Yeah. And his cover story was that, his fiance had cheated on him with another man, and he encountered the man in a bar, and the guy said something kind of smart to him, so he fought him and beat him up, but he ended up going to prison. The applications that he sent to the northern part of the country were like, ain't no way. You went to prison for this. But the employers from the South, Rich, were like, well, I tell you what now, if it was me, I could see myself doing that. We'll give you a chance, Bo. Why don't you come in for an interview? I mean, it was so funny, but there is a remnant of this honor culture in the South. And that's something that kind of sets us, this part of, of the nation apart from the rest of the states, I suppose. But
yeah, sure. I
didn't know if that's something that you had picked up in there, but. And, so kind of move. Yeah.
No. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you, my man. You ready for it?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. So I saw on your website that you and a buddy had an interesting experience, and this set my imagination firing off. Once in Clarksdale, Mississippi, Mississippi back in 2012. Can you tell us about that? And is this the genesis for your love of the blues?
It came about because of my love of the blues. 2012, I suffered a landmark birthday, the Big 5-0, and my wife organised a surprise trip to Mississippi. I thought we were going to see our friends in Oklahoma. We got on the plane and landed in Memphis and met our friends in Memphis. Had 2 nights there, then did a road trip down through Mississippi to New Orleans, where something called Mardi Gras was taking place. I have fuzzy memories of that.
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I imagine so. A lot of us do.
And then we drove back from New Orleans back up to Memphis again through Mississippi, through Natchez. We stopped over in Clarksdale, Mississippi, which is kind of like blue. If you're into the blues, it's Delta Blues Central. That's where all the old blues singers came from. A lot of plantations around there. The blues history, and it's kind of a shall we say, down at heel. I mean, I understand Mississippi is one of the poorest states in America. Anyway, well, Clarksdale and that area are the poorest area of Mississippi, and so they've picked up on the blues theme as a way to get tourism. So blues tourism is a massive thing there. There's a thing called the Blues Trail where you get a book and you get markers, and you can go and visit lots of graveyards and statues and places where people like Charlie Patton, Robert Johnson, they all lived and worked and died. And so yeah, we were in Clarksville with my friend Kyle Sweet. He's a lawyer from Oklahoma. More about him later. But he and I went into this bar on Sunflower Avenue in Clarksdale called Red's Lounge, I think. Red's Lounge, yeah. So we went in there, and it was pretty empty except for the guy who owned it, the guy called Red, and this huge local guy, quite and a beast local guy, and we're sort of chatting away, and he was saying, where you from, why you here? And I said, well, I'm a big blues freak, and here from England to sort of, I'm interested in the Delta blues. And he looked at me and he said, there's no Delta blues anymore. He said, Clarksdale is a theme park for white folks like you. I thought, okay, this is interesting. And he was fine. We were sort of chatting away, and then I said, can I take your photograph? Take a photograph with you? And he said, no, absolutely, definitely not. And it was, he sort of shutters came down. He's like, no, absolutely not. Okay, fine, no problem. I'm cool. My name's Richard. What's yours? And he stood up and he said, I'll get back to you on that. And just walked out the bar. So obviously, nerves had been touched. I think I probably asked one question too many, as I want to do. So we left there and went on a bar crawl. And the last thing before we sort of turned in, my friend Carl said, that scene in Reds will make a great opening to a short story. So I came home, wrote on a thing, and I started writing. I just wrote the scene, not knowing where it was going to go. And then about a year later, I had a novel. So that scene forms the first chapter of Fat Man Blues, available on Amazon Kids.
That's right. And for all the viewers who are watching and saw the book, Rich, can you please hold it up for us one more time there? All right. Yeah. If you guys are looking at this, if you click show notes, the description will expand and you will see a link to it. I will have it in capital letters for you, so it will not be difficult to miss it all. Thank you, Rich. It looks totally cool. I like it. I love the cover too. I mean, the cover on that is magnificent. It's really good.
That's my guitar on my dining room floor. So
I love the colors in it. I love the lighting in it. So yeah, and it has like a fancy design on it too. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So this next question is the real reason why I wanted you here. It was the whole reason why I read the novel to begin with. But so when I was growing up as a kid, submarines, let me tell you, they enjoyed dictatorial powers over my imagination. Every single toy I wanted it to be a submarine. But this was before the internet, and trying to find a toy submarine, anything about the only thing that you could get was a model of a German a U-boat from World War II, and that was it, which would break after about 5 seconds of me trying to solve it. I ended up not joining the service, but sometimes I wonder how different my life would have been had I stepped into the Navy recruiter's office. So you, being a 22-year veteran of Britain's Royal Navy and former submariner yourself, submariner. What was I missing? What was I missing out on?
Well, okay. First off, you're missing an intensive training program like you wouldn't believe. We have to know the submarine inside and out, every single system, every single valve, and what to do when it goes wrong, basically. So from that, you get a background awareness of a bunch of technical disciplines, technology that will set you up in good stead for everyday life. My trade was electronics, working on sonar, radar, communication stuff. But I also had a background in hydraulics, water systems, electrics. So I can fix most things now. And if I can't fix them, I have an idea of how they work because of my submarine background. So what else can you expect? You can expect a disrupted sleep pattern, a minimum 84-hour week. They used to work a two-watch system. So you do, it'll be 7 till 1 and then 1 till 7. So 2 6-hour shifts a day. So as I say, minimum 84-hour week. You get surreal conversations at 4 a.m. in the morning. The opportunity of working with the funniest, most imaginative, most outrageous, yet most professional characters you're ever likely to meet. And on a Royal Navy submarine, you get irreverent weapons-grade banter, which will simultaneously make you wince as you collapse with laughter. It's irreverent British humour at its best. So, yeah, that's what you're missing.
Man, I tell you what, I often wonder had I gone into a different career field. And so, so when I was looking your profile over, now you are a technical writer too, right? Mm. You would do some technical writing. Okay.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. What would you like to tell us about that? Was that something that kind of sprang forth from your submarine career, some of the technical aspects that you would learn?
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of my last 2 jobs in the Navy were sort of shore jobs. The first one was at the Royal Naval Submarine School. It used to be down near Portsmouth in the south of England. And I was designing training courses for submariners, technical training courses. And I found I enjoyed writing training documentation. So I've always been kind of weird anyway. So, but I was one of the few people who actually enjoyed writing the documentation. So I got an interest in that. And then my final job in the Navy, I got promoted to warrant officer, which is I think is Master Chief of the Navy in the US Navy. And I was sent to the nuclear submarine base in Scotland, and I ended up writing nuclear safety documentation. So those 2 jobs kind of set me up for my civilian career when I retired. And since then, so I write. My first job was writing technical manuals for the Navy, so that was interesting. And since then, I've written technical documentation for a wide range of industries, like nuclear industry, nuclear power stations, defense industry, software. I also got headhunted by Jaguar Land Rover, so that's another,
wow, okay,
yeah, another obsession of mine is old Land Rovers. So I drive one now. So, but yeah, got headhunted for Jaguar Land Rover to write their training documentation, technical documentation. So yeah,
that is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I am curious then, do you think any future novel could come from your submariner experience?
I've written a short story based on an incident. A whole novel, I'm not sure. I'd never say never, but I would, if an idea came up, because the way my novels appear is usually a one-sentence idea, usually a what if. So if that could be applied to a submarine life, then yeah, why not? I'll do that, yeah. So the way people interact and conversations and dialogue, some of that from my submarine life has found its way into near death. There's a character called Vinny, who's please
feel free to hold it up again for us, Rich.
Oh yeah,
hold us the book up again. There we go.
There you go.
And viewers, there will be a link to this novel as well. In fact, that is going to be at the very top. You guys can click that and buy a copy of that, and let us know what you think about it. All right.
Thank
Another
you.
Cool graphic too. I like it. I see some spirits in the background. The electric chair. You're giving us a taste of what's to come. I'm not going to give anyone a spoiler alert. That's awesome.
That's my publisher's burning chair. That they're responsible for the cover, and they've done a pretty good job. So
I think so. Yeah. Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah. So there's a character within Near Death called Vinny, who's a sharp-talking, fast-talking New York lawyer, and lots of the terms and phrases that he comes out with have been said to me, or I've overheard in my sort of submarine days. So yeah. The tentacles of submarine life have sort of spread long and far through my life. So, yeah, it's been good.
Well, that is awesome. And thank you for your service as well. That sounds...
Thank you. You're welcome.
Mean, from what you just described, I can tell that it definitely wasn't a cakewalk. I mean, it sounds like, you're really going to serve out your time in that. But this is a good segue for whenever we switch to Near Death, your novel, the one I read, the one that I will be leaving a review for you as well on Amazon.
Okay.
I'm thinking a 1-star, 2-star. No, I'm joking. I'm messing with you. There's definitely a 5-star, folks. But so
as long as you bought it.
Oh yes, yep. I think I bought. Yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah. Well. I was trying to think if I received a copy of it, and I was like, because I mean, I have a bunch of these schedules are lined up, and I have books coming to my house, but for me,
I think I sent you a copy. I can't remember.
I think you sent me a copy, and I was trying to move it to my Kindle, and I was like, this is too much trouble. I'm just going to buy a copy and download it to my Kindle. So
it's the right answer.
That's right. There it is, guys. I got it.
Yeah.
So, when I was reading the novel, I was trying to think to myself, I'm like, when did the idea first come along? Because I've gotten well, it's less than a 50-50 shot. But whenever I'm sitting down with authors, I always like to ask the question, where did the idea come from? But I kind of like to take a stab in the dark and just see if I'm right or not. And I have to say, when I was reading the novel, I was thinking, okay, what scene in this novel is an anchor scene? Like what scene may have come before the what if question? And I was wondering if you had any kind of visits to Sing Sing, or if you had been to New York, or any kind of, okay, I am dead wrong then. I'm dead wrong. I'm just going to have to throw up. I'm going to have to throw up my hands on this. I was dead wrong. Darn. Every now and then I'll get one. I was good with the Thor Narnia when I had him on here guessing some of those. So where did the idea come from? Let me know.
Honestly, I wish I could tell you. And I say that because it was a what if
That's
idea.
The right answer.
Yeah. It was a what if question that popped in my head. But it was such a simple, basic, one-sentence what if question that if I told you what it was, you get the story straight away. I'll send you an email with it, or I'll send you a message with what the what if question was, and you'll see that it's so simple that that's what the story's about. So
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm sorry I can't elaborate anymore, but it truly is that simple that it will give the complete story.
I am intrigued, though.
Yeah.
This is probably the freaking best. This is probably, that right there is probably the best answer to that question I've had on here so far. I mean, you lead off and you're like, no, Frank, I'm not going to show you, but I'm going to keep the curtain pulled. I'm not going to show you yet, the man behind the curtain. I love it. I couldn't ask for a better one, but I'm going to jump to the next question. Let's see if you can answer this. So I found Near Death to be a very detailed, and it contained a ton of technical aspects of what it's like to work in law enforcement. And I know that from my career field. So I was wondering, what kind of research went into the book for you when you were writing this?
As I alluded to before, growing up, I learned American through osmosis, through all the TV shows. So, every second show was a cop show. So you get to know the terms and the procedures. And but I also have two very good American friends. You've got Carl Sweet, who I mentioned before. He's a fantastic bloke. He's a lawyer. He's now a lawyer who used to be a police officer in Oklahoma. And the other friend I've got is a writer called Ran Walker, and you should check his stuff out as well. I'll send you a link to his stuff. Oh, okay. He's now an associate professor in creative writing at Hampton University in Virginia, but he used to be a lawyer. So he helped me a lot with Fat Man Blues. So both of those people kept me on the straight and narrow regarding legal protocol. So any mistakes I've made are mine, not theirs. So yeah, it's growing up. And I'm not growing up with American cop shows and some local knowledge. And one of the most impressive aspects of it, and
if you think this is going to be a spoiler, I can take it out later whenever I edit this. But whenever your main character was, when he was talking to his detective friend in the NYPD, I believe his name is Eugene. And whenever Eugene, when he had taken the case file to his apartment, especially with the, with the photos that hadn't been docked into evidence yet, whenever I was reading that scene, I'm like, ooh, he's fixing to get it. He'll get in so much trouble. They can yank your certification for that kind of stuff. And like, so whenever I was reading the scene, like there's so much there's this intensity in there, and which just kind of showed like his mental state that he was in by that point, just being exposed to the crime of, to Joseph, and like, just seeing those acts and everything played out, how it degraded his mental state to where he just find it, it was really difficult to be a professional. And, the scene when he went in there, he had his gun, the patrolman was in there. For me, it just added this whole other dimension to it, which I really appreciated as a writer in there. So I have a quick question, and this is going to be, and this is going to be a failure on my part, but your main character's name is John Henry, and is that Beauregard? Am I pronouncing that right? That last name? I don't believe I am, but
John Henry Beauregard. Yeah.
John Henry Beauregard. You know what? That flows off of the tongue 10 times better. I should have been a little bit more poetic when I was trying to pronounce it.
John Henry Beauregard.
Like a big highlight over it. John Henry Beauregard. I love it.
Yeah.
So they are both from him and the antagonist, Joseph. They're both from Cherokee County, South Carolina. I will tell you that they have some good hunting there, but that will make me really sound like a Southerner, so I'm not going to say that. Why that particular part of the South? Just out of curiosity.
I wanted John Henry to come to live in come from the Appalachians, and I know it kind of intrudes a bit into South Carolina. It's mostly Virginia, isn't it? From memory, but there is part of it that is in South Carolina. And actually, when I was in the Navy, I went to I did a training course with the U.S. Navy at San Diego, and I made friends with a sailor there. And he was from South Carolina, and he had a cool accent, and it just sounded like a cool place. And so I thought, well, I'll say John Henry comes from South Carolina. So I looked on Google Maps and I found there's a place called Cherokee. So a place called Cherokee County. And I thought, well, that's got to be the perfect place. So yeah, that's where that came from. Yeah.
Well, it sounded like there's a little personal connection as well. Whenever you were doing the training and you met some cool dude from South Carolina, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Through all my writing, there's always a connection somewhere through, which I think that's what writing comes from. It's your own experiences, then you sort of twist them and change them and adapt them. So
awesome. Well, so, and as a little side note for Cherokee County and in South Carolina in general, I know that the main character, he lost his parents to, I believe that they were some bootleggers during Prohibition. And this was after him, which will lead to a sequence of events later in life, him going to the orphanage, his conversion to Catholicism, and eventually a priest. Which I thought it was a really, really sweet touch whenever you added that by the time, he was a pretty young age, he had virtually, he had memorized the Mass. And I was thinking to myself, okay, the year that this novel is taking place, that would have been pre-Vatican II, and you would have been in a real deep, like Latin Mass, like, the old calendar with like these ember days and this elaborate, this ceremony. So it just kind of pointed to John, his level of intelligence and just how observant he was. But
it's also cool. Level of. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, John Henry is a kind of a survivor as well. He'll sort of do what's needed to get by. And when he was in the orphanage, he saw what he had to do to sort of go through without making waves, and that's what he did. So, and that kind of set him on the path for being a chaplain in the U.S. Army and everything subsequent. Yeah. But that kind of fell out. As I say, I didn't sort of set out to write that. It was a kind of a byproduct of, as I was writing it, he needs a backstory, so I went back and did a backstory and developed it that way. So it was more a case of the plot causing the backstory rather than the other way around, if that makes sense.
What I really appreciated about his backstory is that it added a level of depth that I don't think really would have been there. And like whenever, like especially in the beginning of the book, whenever he lost his faith because of like really the dual account of man, man is both good and evil. And he's dealing with just this this manifestly, objectively and metaphysically evil man, Joseph, who's in front of him, but he's also confronted with the dual evil that he sees in the Catholic Church with like the scandals that is kind of like related in there. And unlike a lot of novels that kind of fall into the tropey, the priest lost his faith. It's like, it wasn't that he lost his faith. He was just discovering the truth. Yeah. And it's like, as his character, as he was presented, with the crimes of Joseph, with the conflict, and especially later in the book, which I do not want to get into for the spoilers, but let's say whenever he crosses over, it's like, it isn't that he was losing faith and he becomes like this jaded asshole. It's just that he loses the facade and he's discovering a perennial truth that his Catholic faith was just like a pale reflection of, is what it was. At least me as a reader. And I kind of like to think about characters in my head, throughout my workday, and just kind of like, hey, because, and whenever I read that about him, I was like, you know what, he's coming across as an authentic person because for me as a reader, I find it really hard to trust a character that hasn't had their worldview shattered in the novel at least once. I'm very suspicious of characters that, because it's almost like a bit of propaganda where their worldview isn't just challenged, but it's shattered. And it's like, okay, are they going to pick the pieces up? Or was that shattering part of a larger picture? And it's like when he loses his Catholic faith, it's almost like I don't know if you've ever read any esoteric stuff, but there's this idea of like levels of initiation. And it's like, I kind of see, John Henry going through these levels of initiation through violence, through death, through this evil character. And, it's almost like an archetype almost, but, I really appreciated that as a writer. I mean, because at first I'm like, well, is this going to be a tropey thing? But no, it wasn't. It definitely was not a tropey thing. It was completely the opposite. But I thought that was really very, very well played on your part as a writer. So.
I wish I could say it was intentional. I wish I was that clever.
Well, that's probably the best part of it,
Yeah.
Well, I think it's authentic though, Rich. I mean, your writing is authentic, and authentic writing will reflect reality, is what it does. I think that it reflects reality.
Yeah, I appreciate that because when I heard you were from South Carolina, I thought I had a lot of trepidation with. Oh God, he's going to read my book. What's he going to think of it? Because having never been there, so no, that means a lot. Thank you very much.
Well, I've never been to South Carolina in the 1960s, so you should be safe. I've never been there in the 60s.
Yeah.
All right. So later in the book, and not to give away any spoilers, like I said, but there is a heavy dose of spiritual metaphysics at play. Especially, and I guess it's the transmigration of John, Clara, and Joseph in the afterlife scenes. And I was wondering what kind of study of the esoteric, if any, was done in preparation for these scenes, or was this just something where you sat down in front of your typewriter or word processor, I guess, and did the scenes just come to you?
Basically, yes. I didn't do any sort of deep research into it or any sort of philosophical research into it. I had an idea in my head of what would happen, what might happen, what a soul might look like if it was, because it's one of those things you can say anything, can't you? Because you're not going to, you'll find out once, but you won't come back to tell anybody. So it was just, for sure. That was just my idea of what might happen and how things might sort of play out. I've come around to the idea that everything in the universe is connected, which is, and so that played a part in it. So I think there's a case where there's a bit where sort of two souls touch, and John Henry sort of experiences in a finger snap. He experiences everything that person experienced, and he sort of sees it all. So it's sort of digressing a bit. So a short answer is no. I didn't do any research.
And let me tell you this, Rich. Every kind of digression in this is totally welcome, sir. Totally welcome. I love it whenever we go off the beaten path. I love to travel down some rabbit holes and just talk about any and everything. But yeah, so that was very cool.
Further to that, in a different way, my first novel, Fat Man Blues, explores a similar concept, but in there, my idea then was that the afterlife is wherever you were in this life, that's where you go in the next life. So if you lived in Mississippi and you walk around Mississippi in this life, then that's where you go. And so everywhere you've been here, you'll sort of visit there again. So I'm not a big, I'm not religious at all. So I don't believe there's like a heaven and hell, heaven or hell. It just is if there is anything, So as I said before, it's one of those areas where you can write anything, and you could, nobody can say you're right or you're wrong. So.
I suppose that it's like whatever is beyond the event horizon of a black hole. I mean, we can make it be another world. We can just make it be death itself, because we're never going to know, because no matter how advanced we get, whatever nothing's going to come out of the black hole and tell us what's on the other side.
No, that's right. No.
Which is really, really, really cool. And, I have had some other guests on that have some powerful beliefs about the afterlife, but for me, the most compelling worldview is that as a species, we're just too young to have beliefs, only questions. That's about where I'm at. I have nothing but questions. I don't really have beliefs at this point in life. So
no.
That's pretty cool. Although I have heard one very, very wild theory, and that's that if the human race is ever advanced enough with science and technology, that we wouldn't be able to tell the difference between gods and demons from the future. Like one day because I was listening to a particle physicist on another channel explain time travel. And he says, we can already go into the future if we could go the speed of light. And he said, going into the past is simply a matter of energy and putting that energy into our space-time. And he says, if we have enough energy, we could go back into the past. And he says, it's just an engineering problem at this point. And he was going in like, hey, if we could build a structure that could absorb all the energy of the sun, then we could send something back in time. And he was using all this math that you would probably be better equipped to figure out than me, having served. But I don't know. It was definitely over my head.
My first thought there was a DeLorean with a flux capacitor. So
I know we need to find a flux capacitor. That's what we need. Yeah. Or maybe we could do it like in Star Trek when they went around the sun. So I think that's neat.
Yeah.
Well, so what books have influenced you as a writer, Rich? Just out of curiosity.
There's a New York writer called Andrew Vax who died last year, and he wrote a series of novels with a character called Burke, who lived in the dark underbelly of New York, the New York underworld. And I found a battered paperback copy in a small town library in rural England. And it just changed my way of reading. It's one of the biggest influences of my life. So it's Andrew Vax, Vachss, I think his name. So they're sort of crime novels, but from the point of view of a criminal antagonist. But he's not. Andrew Vax was a prominent lawyer in New York, and he was also an advocate for child protection. So he had a series of interesting jobs to do with protecting children from abuse and everything, stuff like that. And that theme runs through his book. So his character Burke basically takes on cases where children are being abused, and he sort of rains retribution down on the bad guys. So there's also the books. There's one book, Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry.
Oh yeah.
That is probably my favourite novel ever. I'll read a cereal packet if there's nothing else on the table. But of all the books I've read, that's probably my favourite novel ever. Just the storytelling is just immense. I like James Lee Burke. I'm growing up. I'm becoming a big fan of indie writers now.
Oh yeah.
Bo Johnson is one. It's a guy called S.A. Cosby. You see them on Twitter, and so I like crime novels. I like thriller novels. I like some horror novels. Yeah.
Whenever, for me, just kind of floating around on the Twitter space and just kind of going around in the ethereal world of the indie authors, I think 100 years from now, when the historians are writing about the literary history of the United States, of the world, of the Western world, we're going to look back at this period as the golden age of writing. Kind of like now, whenever we look back at the 1950s as a golden age of reading. I think this is going to be the golden age of writing, because there's never been as many readers and there's never been as many writers.
No.
And as the gatekeepers are kind of falling down, the big 10, where the big 8, now they're the big 4 in, the publishing houses.
Yeah.
And I mean, Amazon is so nimble. I mean, you can find exactly your niche in there. And there are so many incredible, just talented writers out there, and there's a lot of readers too. But I think right now, the way the distribution is set up, it's just hard to find your favorite author now. But I think on the back end of the distribution, and especially with Amazon, that's kind of leading the charge on it. I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more readers kind of come into this field, because YouTube, the podcast world, I think, is kind of running its course. I think with really, whenever YouTube came on the scene and TikTok came on the scene and Instagram, I think it took a bunch of the listenership away from the podcast. But with YouTube, I see YouTube being in podcast status in 3 more years, just based on its growth and the engagement of folks who are watching videos. But where a lot of that traffic is going is to Amazon Books, Amazon Vella. Folks are downloading books and reading again. Yeah. So the authors out there, I think if you guys can just hang on for another couple of years, it'll go from a golden age of authors to a golden age of readership as well. I'm firmly, I believe that that's the trajectory where things are going. But
well, for me, the Kindle was the game changer. If you're a prolific reader as I am, you download a book and then you get tips on next books to buy. And it's just like, oh,
exactly, yeah.
Your world opens up. That's happened to me, yeah.
Whereas before, if you were going to a physical, a brick and mortar store, you were limited to whatever selection of books they had.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
For me, the saddest thing is like I mean, if you went to a Barnes and Noble bookstore in South Carolina, they're going to sell, probably 80% the same books as if you went to California. And so what it did is it destroyed the mid-list authorship. Yeah, it did that.
And
well, so what cool projects?
I was going to say for an indie writer. Just further to your last point, for an indie writer, trying to get into the high street stores is really difficult. They won't entertain it if you haven't got like 1 million followers. Then they're not interested. So Amazon's allowed me to sort of fulfill my dream of being a writer. I've got a whole bunch of short stories on Amazon and sort of 2 novels and a third on the way. So yeah.
I've always told folks is that it's easy to be a writer in the traditional publishing houses. If you do all the work, you bring all of the success, and you make all the money, and then give the money to them, then it's easy to be a writer for them. But the big, the publishing houses are there to cater to the top 1% of authors who are making these $1 million advances, and they don't give a rat's ass about the mid-list, beginning authors, or authors with very little following. And
don't get me started on celebrity writers either. So
I could go all day.
That's all the big publishing houses. All they care about are the celebrities, because they've got a built-in follower. They do the marketing for them. So, I self-published Fat Man Blues myself. Obviously, self-published that. Near Death was published by a company called Burning Chair, and fantastic. It's a 2-man outfit based in London, and they care passionately about good. We just check their website. They care passionately about good writers and putting good books out. I somehow found my way on there as well. I'm not sure how that happened, but yeah. But
there's some
so
good ones that are out there, but but the big houses, I mean, they have become the Walmart. I mean, and they're gobbling everyone up.
That's right.
They're just gobbling them up. Well, so what cool projects do you have in store for readers in the future, Rich?
Well, I've just finished writing the sequel to Near Death, and I'm going through the first edit before putting it out there. So I'm enjoying that. Yeah.
Good deal.
Future idea of, as I say, I've got a bunch of short stories up on Amazon. I've had an idea to compile all of those into a single compilation to be released as a paperback. So that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to doing that. I've got an idea for a sequel to Fat Man Blues as well. So I've got stuff to keep me busy anyway. And when the next what if question pops up, there might be something that comes out of that as well.
So the next what if question, and you should be ready for it.
Yeah.
So some of the feedback that I've been getting, since doing this show on YouTube is a lot of my viewership are folks who are aspiring authors themselves. And they'll have questions like, how to get started, where do ideas come from? What if you could offer one piece of advice for, an aspiring writer out there to get to where you're at right now? What's that piece of advice?
Write for yourself. Don't try and write like anybody else. You may not write like Stephen King, but Stephen King doesn't write like you either. So there is somebody out there who will get your voice, who will get what you're trying to say.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Is there anything else you would like to share, Rich, before we close out?
Just massive thanks to everybody who knows me, who's helped me get this far, wherever this far is. Massive thanks to everyone who's bought my books, everyone who's thinking about buying my books. That would be me.
That would be me, Rich. Okay, just saying.
Tell your friends. So
definitely.
And massive thank you to you for giving me this opportunity to have a chat. I've really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I wanted to do this show and Reader's Labyrinth for years because, just kind of looking at Amazon and looking at all the fantastic writers that are coming onto the stage today, I was like, what, if I can give them a voice, if I can give them an hour of my time or half hour of my time. And one thing that I would like every single writer to know, and if an author is watching this, is that you never know whose hands your book is going to end up in. You never know what mind you're going to alter, you're going to change. And you just gave us a story, Rich, about a book that I think you had picked up, a used book. It was all tattered, and it changed in some way. It may change the course of your life. And one day, it could be a year from now, tomorrow, or 10 years. Hopefully, before you exit this life. I know that's kind of a trope as far as writers go, but maybe someone's going to be like, "Oh my gosh, this book!" I mean, it could really. You never know what it's going to do. So.
Fingers crossed.
Unknown quantity as far as humans.
It is, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rich, and best of luck to you, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate this. Thanks again.